Hello, CSL. We are back today, following a slight hiatus from the draft and around about the finals. We now have the winner of the 2021 CSL finals, which was the OK City Thunder. Congratulations to Andrew and his team there. Fantastic win for them. But as always with the wonderful world of the CSL, it doesn't take long for us to finish the championship and then move on to the draft and then into free agency, which is where we are now. And today I'm joined by two co-hosts to talk a little bit about free agency. The first one you can probably hear by some of the background noise is Miles, who is currently in the car en route. I imagine to try and chat up a free agent to try and bring to his rejuvenated Denver Nuggets. But how's everything going, Miles?
It's going great. I'm actually en route to an undisclosed general manager who I'm going to tie to a chair and demand that he trade me one of his players. So, Milos, you're going to be mine. Oh, did I say that out loud? If you guys don't hear from Gary for like a week, don't worry. He's fine.
We shall see. But, I was going to, when you said that, I was going to jump to Higrad immediately and assume that it was the Pacers, considering he's gone on a bit of a hiatus. But the other person chuckling along in the background is the Chicago Bulls GM, Marcus. Marcus, how's everything going with you?
I'm fine. I just want to complain that every time I come to your podcast, I'm introduced as the second guest. Why?
Well, I'm just just starting. I have to start with our leader and our commissioner. Right?
Oh, sure.
It's racism.
No, I understand.
He simply pulls rank on you, Marcus, even though you're a CSL champion and none of us are. But he just pulls rank, and I have to go with that order. But
no, that's okay. That's okay. I'll take it.
I'm sure you'll make up for it with some of your free agency discussion that we're going to have today. And it's probably a good place to start. Actually, we can bring you straight in and talk about the excellent article that you've put on the forum today.
Thank you.
Talking about all the various free agents that are out there this season, and I mean, initial scan for me is that this is quite a deep free agents class.
Yeah, kind of. I actually forgot to include the team option and player option players that might be free agents at all, but it's a very good free agency class. It's a very old free agency class as well, with main guys like Russ Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Derrick Rose, Steph Curry. They are all declining already, but at the end of the day, I think it's a much deeper class than I initially thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, maybe we'll certainly dive in and talk about some players and some teams that have the cap space. But we know obviously that there's going to be some interesting moves and some interesting discussion through this free agency period. But I mean, I guess Miles, you looking at it as a GM, I'm not sure what your exact cap situation is, but picking up to an excellent rookie and John Wall, you certainly are going to be looking at some of these older guys and thinking whether you can get a bit of a bargain and help pull your team back towards the playoffs this year.
Yeah, we have our mid-level exception. Unfortunately, we're pretty capped out with a lot of the players that we have under contract between Wall, Wright, DeAndre Jordan, who we just brought in. So we don't have cap space to work with, but I know that there's going to be some guys who slip through the cracks as always. We've got a couple of holes that I'm looking at in terms of trying to find an impact player. So I'm not going to say too much more than that. Obviously, I don't want to give anything away, but we're definitely going to be looking to add a quality rotation piece. In addition to who we've already brought in, especially Tatum, who's going to be, in my mind, a big contributor, from day one.
Yeah, and if he doesn't, you obviously have John Wall as well, which is certainly not a bad situation to be in at all. But if we take a look at this draft class and we move along really and look at, as Marcus said, some of the top tier talent is older and probably more experienced in this league, but that kind of makes it a bit more interesting, doesn't it, really, where some of these older guys, there's a big decision to be made on some of them, whether a team ties them down to a long-term deal or and take that gamble that they will age and probably decline by the end of that deal, or whether they look to trade them or renounce them, or possibly another team could come in and snag them and just accept the fact that they're going to have to pay them. I mean, Marcus, is there anyone on this list that you kind of pulled together that kind of fits that mold for you straight away?
It's hard to say. I mean, are you talking about players, or are you talking about teams that might be in this position?
I mean, I let's start with players, I think, and then we can talk about some of the teams who have got excessive amounts of cap space to try and entice some of these guys. But I mean, one that I can think of off the top of my head, really, just looking at it straight away, is Kevin Durant. I mean, we know Golden State are in a win now situation. They've still got James Harden, but at the age of 33, with some of the injury problems that Kevin Durant has had in this league, he might be one that possibly could be leaning either way to a team with cap space.
Oh, I see what you mean now. I don't actually think Durant is going anywhere. The way Jeff is trying to build his team, the way he put together a good roster to fit a certain scheme, a certain pattern of tactics, So I wouldn't point out as for Durant to be one of the guys moving, but I'd say I agree with you that he's going to demand a lot of money from Golden State, and I don't see any other way for them other than giving him a lot of money and hoping it is enough to win a ring,
So,
for example,
let me ask you a question then. So, Kevin Durant, at the age of 33, is he going to get a max salary offer from another team?
Well, from another team, I don't think so. I don't really think so. I think he gets a very large offer. I don't know if max offer, because his max is around 19 million. It's a lot of money, but I think he'll get a very large offer from Jeff at about like 16, 17, 18 million, and possibly a 3+1 deal. I don't know, something that doesn't really kill the Warriors in the future, but also they must have to pay him because they cannot afford to lose him at all.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I agree with Marcos here. With Kevin Durant, like I don't think the Warriors really have a choice. I think they're gonna pay whatever it takes to get him in. If the market out there, if there's no teams out there that are gonna offer Durant the 4-year max, which I don't think it's gonna happen. But if someone offers him the 4-year max, Golden State's gonna offer him the 5-year max, right? If the best offer Durant has out there, and this is the offer I would make if I was one of these teams like the Lakers or the Nets, I would make like a 2+1 maximum contract. Maybe not raises, or maybe I'd be a little under the max, but I'd be a short deal with a really high salary in the hopes that I can get him and turn him into assets later. If I see something like that, if I'm Golden State and I see, let's say, Brooklyn offering him a 2-year, $38 million deal, whatever it ends up being, I might just straight up go 4-year max at that point, because if they lose him, they have no avenue of replacing that kind of talent, none whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of why I started with Durant and went a little bit off topic, really, is because for me he's an interesting one, because as a player, his performances still are worthy of a max salary when he plays. The issue has been that he has been injured a lot, and you're not going to get a full 84 games out of him anymore, probably. Be it the DDS bug or because he's injury prone, don't know, but that's the kind of balance I struggle with him, and he's an interesting one for me in free agency, because like you guys pointed out, Golden State are in a bit of a no-win situation. They kind of have to bring him back, which means they're going to have to pay him. It's just interesting to see the perspective on whether other teams might take a gamble on someone who is already 33 years old, doesn't play a full season, but he could be the difference between you in the playoff series of winning and losing. He still has that ability. So he's an interesting one, I think, to pick out. I mean, Marcus, is there anyone else in here that kind of interests you for a different reason?
No, sure, it has. We can talk about the big three, the big trio of older guards, Russ Westbrook, Derrick Rose, and Steph Curry. I think they are extremely talented players. They are all-star caliber players, all of them. But the thing is, you cannot judge how good this contract, how good of a deal it's going to be for the first year, because all of these three have the talent to put you over the top, have the talent to turn an average team into a good one, into a contender. But the thing is, Russ is already 33. Rose is 33 as well. Steph already 34. So the thing with these older guys is it's not this season, it's beyond this season. How many years, how many guaranteed years are you going to offer to those guys? Do you want Steph Curry with 60 defense and 57 handling, with is not optimal for a shooting guard? Do you want to pay him the max with those kinds of numbers, with those kinds of ratings? Do you want to pay Russ Westbrook, who's a driver, who's a player who relies a lot on his handles? Do you want to pay him max money when he is at 52 handling, for example, 2 years from now? So that's the guy for me. That's the thing. How many guaranteed years are you going to offer to those guys? You know, that's what makes it more interesting than where they are heading or anything like this.
I'm glad that you brought up these three guys because I think, first of all, I think actually Westbrook is the most interesting free agent on the market, even more so than Durant, because whereas Durant, the Warriors have to retain him. For the Kings, I don't think they feel they have to retain Westbrook. In fact, I almost feel like they would 100% be okay with letting Westbrook walk. They have, unlike the Warriors, they have a young team with a lot of talent that they can, they're fine more or less without Westbrook. And so that makes him the most interesting one because I feel like he's the most gettable of, these superstar level free agents. Marcos is absolutely right that, these players are going to be declining. And that's going to hurt teams down the road. But at the end of the day, too, like, so many teams are focused on building like these sustainable contenders, like these teams that, you're both really good and young. And what ends up happening is then like these older players get devalued so much when they bring so much on the court value, right? Look at Eric Bledsoe, for example, like Eric and Kemba Walker. Like these guys were not getting the kinds of offers in terms of trade value. Now, obviously, OKC paid a lot for Bledsoe last year, but from what I'm hearing, they're not getting very good offers right now. Kemba Walker obviously didn't get great offers. These are guys that can help teams win today, and at some point you kind of have to make that move because you can try to build a sustainable contender all you want. You might end up on a treadmill, or you might end up being a sustainable fourth seed year in and year out. So these guys are really good, and I think that there's going to be a team that pays up for Curry or Westbrook or Rose and gets a ring in the next 2 years because of it.
Yeah, I mean, just to jump in here, really, with two things, really, is the Kemba Walker deal. Let's not say the Kemba Walker deal was not good value. That was excellent value for Kemba Walker, because if you look at the length of that pick and you look at where you got back, Minnesota are going to be in a dire situation by that stage probably. So the chances are that's going to be a top 6 pick. So the value to get that for Kemba Walker, given his age, is excellent. And I think the second thing that I wanted to sort of bring up is that for me, it's kind of, there's a bit of a litmus test really going on with this free agency in terms of GMs and their behaviour towards free agency, because we've kind of got a split here in free agency. We've got some really elite players who are in the declining age now, who as you mentioned, Miles, they're not going to get any trade value back for them. They sign this contract, they're either going to have to dump them at some point or let's see the contract through. And then you've got the second part of free agents where you've got players who are probably a bit younger, but are definitely 100% not as good as these elite players. But you might get some trade value back. So this free agency to me is going to be really interesting because you look at some of the teams that have cap space, and they tend to be young, up-and-coming teams. And it's whether they want to take that leap forward now with an older player and accept the fact that they won't get anything back for him, or whether they want to build with some more younger players and eventually pile that into an asset and perhaps try and get someone like an Anthony Davis next year. So that's kind of how I see it. I mean, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are in terms of whether you kind of see that as well, or whether you've got a different view on this free agency.
I mean, I totally agree with you. There are a lot of good younger players, players who, may or may not be obtainable, right? Like, for example, Otto Porter is a unique example of a young free agent who's also like on the elite level, but chances are he's getting a 5-year max from the Kings on day one. So
even Otto Porter, he's 29.
Yeah, but okay, but like 29, that means you give him a 4-year deal. He ends at 33. He's basically the same player ratings-wise today.
Yeah,
he's going to be at the end of the deal. So you really can't like worry about that. But I mean, younger than that, you're probably talking about RFAs most of the time. But the other guys, right? The other younger-ish players that are going to be out there, like Ben McLemore, for example. Like he's probably around the same age as Otto Porter. Really great player. Excellent shooter, but he's not a superstar. So exactly like you're saying, do you go for McLemore and in the hopes that, if it doesn't work out or you decide that you want to move on, his contract is movable because, it doesn't seem like such an albatross? Or do you get the more higher impact player in a guy like Westbrook, and then a year or two from now, you're like, oh, well, I better hope this thing worked out. It's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, we talked about a couple of players here, but let's talk about a couple of the teams really that have the cap space to make moves, and kind of why we're talking about this, thinking of, do teams gamble on older players or not? Because if you look at the teams with the most cap space this offseason, you've got LA with, I mean, anyone watching, this is ballpark figures. This is not based on renounce. This is based on them renouncing everyone and not re-signing anyone. But ballpark figure of about 30 million. You've got the Brooklyn Nets with a similar sort of amount, and the San Antonio Spurs with about 30 million to play with as well. And then you've got Houston as well, just below that. So you've got 4 teams there that have gone through a sort of a rebuilding phase, a bit younger than some of the other more experienced teams, and it's kind of going to be interesting to see where they go. So, I mean, Marcus, those 4 teams, which ones do you think are going to make a move to a talent at all costs, regardless of age, and which ones are going to look at the younger players and trying to build up that way?
I think LA definitely looks after the younger guys. I mean, team just got Marvin Bagley, who's a player he loves. He's trying now to build something more organically than bringing older guys and trying to create a team in just one off season. He has all his draft picks. He has lots of flexibility, not only cap space this year, but he has younger players also in Emmanuel Mudiay, Austin Rivers. He probably is going to re-up this guy so without having to pay like too much. So I think he's going to slow down and go for the correct pieces. And as for example, the Houston, I think they have Carl Anthony Towns, who's a rising superstar in this league. Malik Monk just got that scoring boost, so he's ready to become a superstar as well. And I think if Biz is interested in acquiring older players, it's a good time for him because he's going to pay for Tyus Jones. He's going to pay for Kevin Loney. So it's maybe his last off season where he can make a real splash with something like two maximum deals or something close to this, you know. So I definitely see Houston. I definitely see the Brooklyn Nets as well, as they are much deeper than last year. They are ready to go as well, and they don't have to pay his Onja for another year. So I think they are ready to acquire older talent as well. I see the Hawks, who also have lots of cap space as a team ready to acquire older talent, and even the San Antonio Spurs, as they did uh, proclaim their interest in Walter Tavares. And I think if they find a way to get Tavares, who's only 30, they can be in play for a 30-year-old forward as well, and create a very good team with Lakina, with Gary Harris, you know?
Yeah, for me, I think the Nets and the Rockets are in the well, and the Hawks too. I think they're the most like in the position to go after more established, ready now players because obviously Houston was a playoff team. Carl Anthony Towns is ready. They have a couple of free agents that they can keep at their low cap number and bring back later. So they're going to have to be aggressive early so they can get their free agents before they have to make decisions on Tyus Jones and Kevon Looney.
Yeah.
So I could easily see them going after one of those top free agents early. The Hawks have Dante Exum, who's one of the have the opportunity to get him. The Nets, I think, should and absolutely could go after ready now talent. I don't know if they will, based on what Rizzo has been saying and his desire to go after younger players. He might not go that route, but I think Ayton's ready to be a defensive stalwart center from day one. I think that Hazonia is going to absolutely be at best, or sorry, at worst, a second fiddle offensively. I think that they can absolutely be a winner if they get the right free agent. But again, I just don't know if that's what he wants to do.
And for those young teams as well, they need to be careful not to miss their windows, their opportunities, because once those young players come out of their rookie scale deals, you're gonna have to pay them as well, and then you
Yep.
miss out on the opportunity to acquire better talent at free agency.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, which is why I said I think the Nets absolutely should, because their best chances while Hazonia and Ayton make next to nothing. Um, the Spurs could do it too, but I don't think Livingston and Ntilikina are ready, to go after it like that. I don't think they're at that same level as like Ayton and Hazonia, or Carl Anthony Towns and Malik Monk, for example.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let me just throw another team into the pit for you two to discuss, really. And that one is one that kind of sits slightly below this. And again, I don't know exactly whether they've got cap holds on guys or restricted free agents, but the New York Knicks have $22 million in salary free this year to play with. And that is a team that could go either way, surely.
Well, here's the thing
Yeah,
with the
for
Knicks.
sure.
Unfortunately, Phil may not be around for free agency, which is unfortunate. And obviously, my thoughts are going to be with him and his family. And I know a lot of people have already reached out to him, regarding his situation. Honestly, I hope that whoever he gave his instructions to, his free agent instructions to, don't, basically, I hope that they don't go overboard. That the Knicks aren't too aggressive in free agency. I think they're just too far away from being a winning team, and I think that they need to be a team that plays the let's get value contracts, team friendly contracts, and so that way he can turn those into draft assets to young players, that sort of thing. Because if he goes out and overpays for some of these guys, he's gonna be the one stuck paying the bill, and they're not in the position to be able to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Their best bet is to try to acquire someone like Ben McLemore, like Otto Porter, like let's say Aaron Gordon, some unrestricted free agent that you're going to be able to turn into valuable pieces, into valuable assets, future assets, because there's no point on keeping any of those guys on that roster when there's no help besides George DePaula and maybe Maudulu if he develops at all. I don't know. So he's in a unique position where he can say screw it and let's max auto Borden and see what happens. And if Porter, for example, or McLemore pulls a Dame Lillard and leaves their mother teams for the Knicks, then Phil can trade those guys for high draft picks, high assets, great assets, and this will kickstart his rebuild much faster than he would.
I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of agree with you. What you guys are saying there in terms of the Knicks, and just a shout out to Phil, and if he ever gets around to listening to this, hope everything's okay, buddy, and we look forward to having you back, and everything's okay. So, looking at some of the other things around in terms of free agency, so just wanted to touch on, just quickly go back to the Lakers. I think the Lakers are an interesting situation because we've talked about the Nets, the Rockets, and the Hawks. Teams that are really going for the playoffs, really trying to be an elite team, probably straight away this season. But the Lakers are an interesting one because they obviously got burnt through the Kevin Durant trade and had that experience with some older players, and it didn't quite work for them. So I think absolutely they're going to go off on a younger side. And a player we kind of both touched on there was Ben McLemore. Is he probably the biggest prize in this free agency because of his age and his talent?
I don't think so.
I mean, Otto Porter.
Yeah.
I think is definitely the number one if we're talking about overall value.
How realistic is it to get Otto Porter?
Oh, 0%. But
Yeah.
you didn't say the most obtainable, most attractive.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize I had to completely be very specific with you, Miles. But the most achievable free agent for a team targeting an unrestricted free agent.
I would agree. Ben McLemore is the guy. I would agree with you.
And
I think so.
I guess the question to both of you then. So if he's going to probably be one of the most targeted, he's probably going to receive a max salary offer. Does anyone disagree with that?
No.
He's gonna get a max offer.
He's going to get a max offer.
Yeah.
Question to you guys: is he worthy of a max offer? And where do you think that is likely going to come from? It can be a couple of teams. You don't have to name one individual team. I mean, we know the Celtics are obviously going to be quite keen to keep him, but just interested to hear what you guys think.
I think it's close enough. He's close enough to being worth a max contract that we can sit here and squabble over whether he's worth. Is his max number going to be the 13 or is it going to be the 16?
16.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I still think it's close enough because we can sit here and say, oh, maybe he's only worth, like 12 million or 13 million. But at a certain point, to get a guy of his talent, you have to overpay a little bit. And I don't think that's overpaying too much to get McLemore.
Well, in a league that pays Nerlens Noel and Jonas Valanciunas the max, and there are takers for them. Phil reached out to Manu about taking one of them for free. So there are no unmovable contracts in this league. So I think McLemore is at least close to the value, as Miles said, and this makes him a lot to get a max offer. Not only him, but Aaron Gordon as well, and maybe even Walter Tavares as well.
Yeah, which is interesting because obviously Marcus is likely to leave at a 3. I'm guessing because you think the Celtics are going to basically pay to keep him, I'm assuming, in that thought. But or was there something else there? I'm guessing you kind of feel that the Celtics need to keep him.
Yeah.
I mean,
They go
I
on.
don't know if the Celtics need to keep either of these guys. I think that's one of the luxuries of the positions that they put themselves in.
Really?
I think
For
I think that they would absolutely want to keep both of them. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think that it's like a hey, we can absolutely let this guy walk and we're gonna be fine. But
oh sure.
I think that they do have a lot of talent. I think they need to keep at least one of them. I don't think they can let them both walk. But I think at the end of the day, if it comes down to it and they're both being offered a max contract, I think the Celtics might play it a little more shrewdly. And I have absolutely no inside information on this.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Celtics are an interesting proposition this year because of the two free agents they have, and just McLemore seems to be the one that's most talked about through the free agency build up. Really, we talked a lot about some of the guards on here. And we might come back to a couple of them in a bit, but I guess just scrolling back down to the forward. So we talked a bit about Porter and Durant. You've then got this kind of middle tier of kind of guys who probably aren't quite elite, but are good players in who are restricted free agents in Middleton, Green, Mirotic.
I think all of them are going to be matched, but there's one guy you can point out that his team is going to have every single kind of complication to match him, and that's a guy that brings Drake Crowder like defense with 3-point shooting, and that's the guy that might become the he's not the biggest prize of free agency, but he's the easiest to acquire. Even though he's a restricted free agent, he's going to demand a huge effort from his team to keep around, and that's Demar Carroll. You don't have to offer him a max deal. You can offer him a 10, 11 million deal starting salary. And OKC is going to have all kinds of trouble finding a way to keep Carroll. They already said they want to keep Carroll, but they couldn't move Bledsoe. They couldn't move SJJ. They tried. They are not going to have an easy time moving Kui as well. So at the end of the day, if a team strikes quickly enough and OKC doesn't act as quickly as it needs to, we might see DeMar Carroll in another jersey next season.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of the luxuries of winning everything this year in that the gamble to go right up towards the salary limit for OKC it worked a treat for them, and this is the downside of it is that not a bad downside by any means, but they obviously got salary constraints now, and guys like DeMar Carroll hit free agency straight away, and they've obviously got to try and do something either to keep him or to move some assets around to get that flexibility back, which is going to be a struggle for them. And yeah, I kind of agree that it'll be an interesting one to see how much he gets offered and see whether OKC can move the book around a little bit to either keep him or flip him or whatever they decide to do. Just looking at some of the other forwards here, I mean, there's a lot of restricted free agents in this forward list that you've pulled together, Marcos, but just a couple of guys sort of floating around that might be of interest to playoff teams. I mean, you've got Jimmy Butler, who we know is still productive, LeBron James, who probably isn't as productive as he was, but could probably still add something in a rotation. You've got Evan Turner, you kind of mentioned experienced guys. I mean, it seems more like we've got experienced vets sort of piping up this list in comparison to perhaps some of the other positions, really.
Yeah. I think those guys you're talking about, they use it to figure in like eight figure salaries and everything like this. They used to be treated as great stars. LeBron was a superstar. Jimmy Butler was one of the best defenders around the league. Those guys, they are not at the same level they once were, but they can still be very predictable. They can still play their role to perfection. LeBron can score. LeBron can be a very good addition to an offense. Jimmy Butler can defend. Same way he could, he's 33, but the he was such an elite defender that he's still an elite defender. So if you manage to get these guys for like MLE money, something like this, you're going to have real value because you have contributors who are getting paid to do uh, the to play like bench players, but they can still contribute like stars. Even though they might only last for 1 year or two, it's starting production for 1 year or two at a very low salary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, another one to sort of throw into the mix is Bogdanovic as well. He's an interesting one because he's slightly younger than the other guys, which means you'll kind of get a few more years out of him. And it'd be interesting to see how much money gets thrown his way because I could see him possibly moving on if the money's good.
Are you talking about the UFA Bogdanovic or the RFA Bojan Bogdanovic?
UFA
They're both
Bogdan.
okay because they're both free agents this year.
Yeah. Bogdanovic, the UFA, 30 years old.
I see some like what happened with the Grizzlies this year with Dylan Brooks and Marshawn Brooks. Someone's gonna sign one of them and be like, "Oh crap, I wanted the other one."
Yeah, probably someone will. I can see that happening definitely.
One thing since we brought up some of their names, one thing that really interests me about this free agency is there's a number of productive players who I think have really low perceptions of them because of the contracts they were just recently on. Like Evan Turner, for example, quality player, made way too much money. Ty Lawson, same thing. I think
true.
some of the other guys like Daniel Miller, Tyler Stone, these guys made a lot of money. I mean, double digit, millions, and so a lot of teams really didn't want anything to do with them, but they're still quality players. They can still make a difference.
Yeah.
Are people going to be able to see that for what it is, or are we going to be clouded by like the judgments that we've had of them for the last few years?
Yeah, it's funny because all those guys are coming off their primes. Yeah, most of them are coming off their prime years. So in this league, we have a culture of treating players who are 32 and older as don't as wash it up, and it's not true. Those guys can still contribute on 1 year deals, 2 year deals, even 2+1 deals. So absolutely agree with Miles here. Whoever gets the most of these opportunities to get those older guys at quality money at great value, whoever gets this is going to be in a much better position than the people who cannot take advantage of this situation. Because they only think, oh, this guy's 32, this guy's I don't want him anymore, he cannot contribute. That's not true.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. I mean, the one that I've brought up a couple of times, chatting to people in this off season, from my experience last year, is for this sort of free agency, this is perfect for a team like Portland in that we can pick up experienced guys who are undervalued because they've come off of big contracts. And a great example is Joakim Noah, who we had last year, retired in our file this year. He was a minimum salary contract guy, and he played roughly about 25 minutes a game for us, and he started for us in the playoffs and was still unbelievably productive and a really, really good defensive player. And I was paying him hardly anything. So there certainly is value if you look at it and look at the older guys. It's just a case of being able to see it, really.
Yeah. Take for example Dwight Howard. This is a guy who has 75 defensive rebounding, 73 defense, 58 blocking, which is acceptable, 92 draw flying ability, 74 DI. He consistently shoots over 50% from the field, and the guy was making 24 million, almost 25 million bucks with the Phoenix, with the Cleveland, and also after the Phoenix, after the deal. So you look at White and say, "Oh hell no, I'm not going to pay a lot of money to this guy." But you don't actually have to pay a lot of money for him because he's a very productive guy. He still got some solid ratings. He's a good rebounder. He's a good defender still. He's got the ability to fall out any other center in this league, and you can get him for MLE money, on a 1 year, 2 year deal. So it's really good value for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and you've given us a nice little segue into the centre section of your article, and Dwight Howard's a great example of an Asian player who's still ratings wise could easily be a starter for any team in this league. So, but just going slightly above his ranking of 7 and looking at some of the top tier guys in the centre position, which we kind of haven't talked about yet. Well, obviously you've got Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, the Jazz are going to keep him. He's an RFA. Hassan Whiteside, we know the Hawks are going to keep him. There's no doubt about that. Then below that, we've got 2 guys who are unrestricted free agents who are still solid starters in this league, in Walter Tavares and Clint Capella. I mean, obviously, Marcus, you probably won't want to talk about Clint Capella too much, but Walter Tavares is an interesting one because he's one that we've talked about a couple of times on this cast before in terms of he is a productive player, but he doesn't necessarily generate wins for a team. Where do you guys think how he's going to end up? Is he going to get paid? Is a team's going to sort of think twice about him now?
I think Tavares is going to get. I think Tavares will get paid if there's a team with cap space that needs a big man. I don't know. Unfortunately, every team situation that has cap space, and so that's going to be a determinant. But I don't think anyone's going to be scared off by this idea that Tavares doesn't help teams win games. I still think that's crazy.
Yeah, but the Spurs they already pointed out that they are looking at Tavares to fix their big man roles. So how do you think they're going to treat these Miles, and how do you think Gary responds to this? Because he's Gary's best center by Miles, and
I mean, Tavares is 30, right?
Yeah, sure. But Gary,
they're both going to give him 4-year deals.
Oh yeah, sure. But do you think, for example, if the Spurs offer him like 16, 17 million, do you think Gary matches it? Do you think what do you think it happens then?
I think Gary's going to keep Tavares, and I think, I don't know the exact of his cap situation, but I do know that he has some bench players that probably make more money than they really are worth. So if he has to trade, for example, Biyombo to get off of his whatever he's at $10 million a year that he's making, or if he needs to trade Tristan Thompson,
6.8.
Oh, I thought he was making more than that. Yeah,
no,
so
I think Tristan Thompson making 16 million. Yeah,
I think he would absolutely keep Tavares. I think Tavares is his best big man, and if he has to move around a few other things in order to do so, I think he'll do that.
Oh, sure. You got it.
No, personally, I'd love to see Gary go back to complete and utter small ball and just ditch Tavares and just run a point guard there, just because it would be a bit of a bring back to the NLL for those guys who were in there. But yeah,
poor Gary. He probably ran this lineup like once, like 6 years ago, and now he'll never hear the end of it.
I try my best to bring it up every video cast that I do. So. Yeah, this free agency is going to be interesting because there's a lot of depth, and we've kind of talked over some of the main points here. I mean, is there anything else that that stands out for either of you guys in terms of players or teams that are to keep an eye out for?
Can I?
I mean, I just overview. Like, I mean, for me, this is one of the bigger free agencies that I think we've had in a while, just in terms of like the number of impact players that are available. You know, that I think we've had some free agencies in the past where there's, you know, like the really like high caliber talent, and I think I don't remember if Davis is going to be a free agent next offseason or the one after that. But like, for example, like whenever Davis or Paul George is going to be free agents, those are going to be huge. Or maybe not George. He's getting old. But my point is, there's a lot.
The,
There's a lot of really high quality players, and I think that is what is going to make this free agency so interesting because there's so many different ways that these teams can get over the hump, adding a high quality, a top tier free agent.
yeah. I just want to point out to something. I did this article, this free agency tracker, to help people understand what's going on around the free agency. What goes on my mind, for example, what do I use to build my teams? I'm not going to be, I don't want to sound cocky or something like this, but every time I went through a rebuilding, every time I went through some adverse situation, I've been able to build quality teams. And I'm just trying to give people an insight of how I see things, you know. And one thing that I wanted to point out is that there's a culture around this league which comes together with the one we are talking about the old guys, 30, 31, 32 old guys, you know, and that they don't have any value. There's another culture here that says that you must screw uh, another team before improving yours, and that's not true. What NBA teams do, what the best CSL teams do, is that they they try to make the moves that improves their teams the most, you know, and then you go be the best teams in the league. So I added the likelihood to leave column just to show you who are really obtainable, who are pointless offering, you know, unless you, for example, you're not going to offer a 4-year max deal for Porzingis unless you don't have any other thing to do. And for example, uh, you want to offer a 3+1 with a player option, so he hits the market earlier, you know. But I've been careful enough to give ones only to restricted free agents. Sorry, and you see that even Otto Porter and Kevin Durant, those guys who I think are locks to stay with their teams, I gave them two because there's always a randomness factor in this engine, and these players are obtainable. So I hope this time people who really have a shot at improving their teams up to a level that it matters, they focus on improving their teams instead of screwing other teams, making other teams pay, because this way you're going to sabotage whatever you're trying to build, you know. You're going to lose time. You're going to, of course, screw teams. But for example, let's say Chris doesn't want to pay Mirotic 13 million, but he wants to pay Mirotic 12 million. And I'm a team with cap space. I'm not going to offer him 1 million more just to have it matched. And my salary, my money is there for 2 days. You know, I can't do anything with it. There's, like Miles said, there's a real possibility every team can improve in this offseason. There are so many good players available, even older players, and I hope teams have that in mind when going to free agency. I need to improve my team. Then I focus on screwing all the teams on anything like this. That's my point. That's why I did this article.
Yeah, spoken like someone who's been there, done it, and won it, and got the t-shirt, and is now passing on that experience to other GMs. And yeah, hopefully people take those words on board. And it's a fantastic article you've put together, Marcus, and we look forward to seeing how this develops. And it's been great to have you on to talk about it. Likewise, Miles, it's been great to have you on to talk through some of the interesting topics before free agency kicks off. And I'm sure we'll be back on throughout the period to talk about some of the big moves or the big re-signings that happen.
Yeah, I look forward to coming back on here when I pull the biggest surprise move of the offseason and get out of Porter.
I'm sorry, guys, for my long conclusion, but I wanted just to point that out because I thought it was going to be very important to explain why I did this. I did this for the GMs, not for me, not for myself, not for the scouting points.